All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining in, and of course, thanks for ASTN and the people of the Sports Tech World Series here for hosting me in this session. I have to say good morning for the European people, and good afternoon for the ones in Australia or wherever you are. You see a bunch of logos there. So my name is Kristof De May, as you know. I will, during this session, talk about the Belgian sports tech landscape and mainly talk a bit about the different stakeholders that we have here in the country, the different initiatives, as they have positioned themselves and have been active the last couple of years within the ecosystem. And of course, the whole idea is to share a bit how it works here and learn as well, of course, during the Q&A then afterwards a bit, okay, what are the opportunities for countries as Australia and so on. And so I'll also share a bit, success factors, maybe a big term, so to say, but I think we do make some progress in terms of the amount of sports technology companies and initiatives and so on here in the region and the country. And so I will explain a bit how we managed to do so. And also I'll touch upon some practical ways or some ideas for the future on how collaborations could be established. This is where we are. It's early in the morning, 7:30 here in Ghent. Ghent, little town, 250,000 people. I'm born here and actually have my life here, so feel welcome in Ghent. It's also a good place, in fact, from a European point of view, because as you know, Brussels is, of course, the headquarters of the European Commission, and we have good connections, of course, to London, to Paris, Germany, Amsterdam, and the rest of Europe. So that's a nice thing. It's a small country. And it's also a bit a complex country, and that has some implications on policy making when it comes to sports technology and innovation. Introducing Belgium from a community point of view is not always an easy thing to do. But good to know is that we have a Flemish, a French, and a smaller German community, and then there is Brussels there in the middle. The main activities that I'm most familiar with are in the north region of Belgium, in Flanders. But I'll also talk a bit about the national initiatives and how they facilitate trade missions and so on. There are actually various entities here facilitating the, not only the sports technology ecosystem, but the sports sector in general. That's Sport Vlaanderen in the north of the country, and then ADEPS in the south of the country. They also deal with both the elite sports aspect, as with the sport for all aspects. And so in terms of tournaments, they deal with European and World Championships. And then we have our national initiative, so the Olympic community, so to say. This visual represents a little bit the general context, which is quite a complex ecosystem. As you can see here, it's a slide of a couple of years ago, but it represents the key stakeholders, in fact, both on the governmental as non-governmental side, and as I already explained, national, or then concerning the Flemish part. I will not go into detail in all of these different entities, and in fact, while preparing the presentation, I was like, well, how am I going to explain who is doing what and so on and so on. So I decided to go back to the basics and start explaining a bit what I'm doing. And so you might already have seen this this website called Victoris, which is not a spin-off company. It's actually an initiative by Ghent University that I'm managing. And the whole idea of it's in fact some kind of consortium, you could say, within the university. The whole idea there is to bridge the gap between research and then other entities as companies, startups, and various entities within and people within the sports sector. And so my job there is to bring more of the research from Ghent University in whatever faculty or department, try to bring it into market opportunities, and on the other hand, connect with the market and then try to set up projects with particular experts within universities. We're mainly focused on everything that relates to the athletes or the person. It could be elite athletes, could be amateur athletes, could be people who behave more in a sedentary way. We have less experience when it comes to fan engagement, media, marketing innovations, etc., etc. I've been a sports physio myself. I worked in elite basketball and in youth development. And then after my PhD, I entered into this job. And I will explain a bit in the next couple of minutes what's the setup, because I think it's a very interesting setup, which makes it possible that I'm able to do this job. So we have three main areas, in fact. Of course, everything that relates to digital, but we also do some projects more in the area of sportswear. So for the shoe companies, insoles, braces, garments, and so on. And then a smaller part in nutrition and supplementation. So this is just a screenshot from the website. So I'm working with around 20-25 research groups. So these are all professors and they all have their research groups, and it's my job to create bridges between them and then also between them and the outside world. It actually all started about 10 years ago, when some of the professors wanted to create a spin-off company out of it in the area of injury screening and prevention. And they actually did. So that was a company called Spartanova. Maybe you already heard from them. We actually learned a lot about the process of creating a spin-off company out of university and then what happens next. The company actually restarted recently. So a few people who were working in the company, they did a relaunch of the company. It's now called Highlights. And the first thing they are developing is their talent identification module. So including existing knowledge, not only Ghent University related, but we do have a group in that area. And they offer a platform which contains the existing knowledge when it comes to talent identification and everything that relates to biological age, maturation, and how to define high potentials at a young age. I'll give some examples of projects that I'm being involved now. One is this project here called Muscle Talent Scan. It's a project by Professor Wim de Rave, and over the past decade, in fact, he developed a method to define muscle fiber types, slow versus fast twitch, with an MRI scanner instead of a biopsy. And it's a good example, in fact, of possible collaborations between our university and Australia, because Wim, he's been in Australia for 6 months related to this project, and he talked to many of the researchers, sports institutes, and so on, to see to what extent this technology could be implemented and used within Australia. He came back with some ideas, but we're still in the phase. It's still a project under the umbrella of the university, but I'm helping him with our ambitions to spin it out at some point. So there's a separate website about that if you want to learn more. And as said, we actually learned a lot about the differences between Belgium and Australia. For example, a difference that is relevant in this case is, for example, the MRI market is dominantly a private market in Australia, whereas here in Belgium, that's mainly regulated by the government, which has, of course, implications in terms of using MRI devices for these kinds of elite athlete purposes. This was a visual. They published a paper recently together with people from Ghent University, and this then appeared on LinkedIn and Twitter and so on. Other projects we're working on in the area of running, for example, running wearable and technology that provides real-time feedback to runners based on the impact intensity that they provide on their bodies. And they use sonified feedback in real time. So we're also working towards licensing the technology or create a spin-off out of it in about 1 year from now. And we also focus on student entrepreneurship. This is a project, it's a student of ours. Well, he's not a student anymore. He's doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he was really frustrated because he had to tape his fingers over and over again, which takes time, costs quite some money, and is not always that nice. And so he came up a couple of years ago, in fact, with a design to create some kind of sports glove. And then we helped him with improving the design with the IP protection, with the prototyping, with the testing, and so on and so on. And so this is also a spin-off project that we are working on. And then there's another example. I will talk a bit about it later on in the project. It's a bit linked to highlight, but then more focused on, okay, how could you really define which type of sports match best with the natural talents of a child and what the child actually likes to do. So that's then more focused on schools, municipalities, and so on and so on. And so besides that, I mean, we work with a high variety of both local as international companies. And so again, this has been a learning, and I'm very happy to explain a bit the broader setup. And I'm also interested in, okay, how is the technology transfer aspect and the university industry collaboration aspects being organized in Australia, and how could we learn from each other? Our basis is the sports laboratory. So former RC president Jacques Roche, he was an alumni of ours, and so that's, let's say, the central department. But then we work with many experts in other faculties and departments in other places in town as well. So the whole focus there is how can we go from theory to practice and from research to business and vice versa. And I was thinking, okay, what can I share in terms of those things that need to be in place to make this a success? Because I think I don't have to tell you, academia is a totally different world as sports practice is a totally different world as a business, and then government trying to facilitate both the economic aspect as the societal aspect. And I came up with these three keywords, so to say. In order to be in this job, you really need trust, both from the academic side as from the industry side, but also from people working, of course, within sports with these type of projects. Trust is really a key a key element there. I think that's in general, but in our sports tech innovation system, I think it's crucial. Also, of course, you need to create value and you need to push people a little bit. And this is what I really like. I can push the researchers a bit to be a bit more open-minded and entrepreneurial. You can push the people within the industry a little bit to say like, okay, but maybe it's good to validate or to include more of the evidence within your technology. And you could also push a bit the people working within the field to make smart decisions when it comes to technologies available in the market, and to step into or not step into different R&D kind of projects. And at the end of the presentation, I'll present a bit my vision towards the future and an initiative that I'm taking to do that in a better way, and also more in an international context. So what's the structure behind? And I think this is the thing that makes it possible. Within our university and within our university association, so also including the university colleges within the city, the university chose to have a dual structure when it comes to technology transfer and business development. I'm in the team there on the right, so I'm one of the business developers. And as I will explain in the next couple of slides, so I have about 30 colleagues who are doing the same job as me, but not in sports, but in specifically for food or specifically for medical technologies or even totally different areas. On the other hand, we have a central tech transfer department, I think most universities have, and they are dealing with IP issues, legal issues, facilitating the business developers within their initiatives. So here you can see these are the different business development centers that have been created within our university. And so the Victoris there is the one focusing on sports. It's actually the only one here in the region which is focusing on sports. Maybe you have seen that at a certain moment we were hiring people, and that's because our university said, okay, you also need to collaborate not only within your own cluster, but also between those clusters. And so in the future now, we will look into new opportunities more on the sensor level. So based on our two other entities there, ePoly and V-Photonics. So more from the engineering technical point of view, with then new applications in medical or sports. This is actually made possible by the Flemish government. So it's really a policy to facilitate your interaction between universities and industry. And yeah, you could say I'm blessed that they also focus on sports, and at some point then hired a person to facilitate those interactions. This is the amount of money that goes into it. Again, it's Flemish government type of money. And in the diagram there, you see the percentages between the 5 different Flemish universities. So Ghent is one of the 5 universities. You know, Leuven is also strong in both in sports as in technology transfer as well. And then we have 3 others, so Antwerp, Brussels, and Hasselt University. That's not only related to sports, as I just explained, but we can use a bit of that money to do those activities. There's also an investment fund, so inter-university VC fund, as you see here in the details. But I have to be honest, we didn't yet were successful with mature enough projects within the sports sector. So yeah, this might be something for the future. So the whole idea, and this is a visual of our venture track. The the whole idea, of course, is to create more spin-offs in the end, or to license out new technology to existing companies. And I think this is a strong belief of mine. I think in the future, given sports technology is becoming a very competitive field with many entities in there, I think it's really smart, both from different entities, to look into those opportunities. It's not always an easy thing to do, of course, but I'm a strong believer that in the next couple of years, we see more and more activities in that research-driven area of sports technology innovation. So yeah, I think this is a bit the context, and I think if I should answer the question, okay, what would be ways to collaborate between what we are doing and what's happening in Australia? Well, I think collaboration is already there at some point on the project level, but I think from a structural partnership point of view or strategic partnership point of view, I would be very open to discuss those opportunities. We already have some bilateral agreements with some Australian universities. It's more on the educational level. And I'm not really familiar with many activities already within sports, but yeah, we could set up something new, of course, as this as well in the future. There's also a fund linked to these activities. So the VC fund that I just mentioned is there for the companies already a bit more mature. This is really what you see here in the visual. The different types of projects is really gap funding. So that's the type of funding for projects that are still under the umbrella of the university, but are not only research focused. And you know, if it's purely research focused, often the output there is the academic output. But this type of projects, they are focused on really creating a product out of it, and then in the end, do the necessary things to bring it to the market. So I have been pushing this within the university, and we have been successful in attracting some of these grants up to 350K per project. For example, the muscle talent scan projects or the running project are examples. I think, well, I experienced this as really valuable project money because, yeah, as the name says, it's gap funding. So if you want to bring more research to market, you need to do other things than only the research. And so this is a fund that is available to do these things. You know, these kind of funnels from ID all the way to developing a concept, having a technical proof of concept, an industrial proof of concept, and then in the end, something that is available in the market. And so the different types of projects, yeah, they're focused on different phases. I would be very happy to know if this type of funding is also available in Australia. I actually don't really know, but in my experience, yeah, this is really helpful. So this is another idea that I had in the past couple of months is, look, academics, they're often working on a part of a solution, and it would be interesting to have a good view on what's out there within different universities. And maybe at some points could be interesting to set up joint licensing and spin-off creations. Why not? For example, the talent scan project is a good example. It's useful for talent ID. It's useful for personalizing training based on the muscle profile of athletes, but it's a part of the puzzle. So at some point it could be interesting to look at different innovations and then license them out or create a new entity out of it together with other entities. Okay, that's, let's say, the academic part that I'm working in, and you can imagine while doing so, yeah, we of course are building our networks, and we of course we also before Corona hit, we also like to do networking and sharing of knowledge and interact. And me being a networker myself, at a certain moment I was in touch with many startups, but there wasn't really a structural initiative which could help the startup companies with becoming more mature. And so I've set up a project. It started about 2 years ago. Maybe you have heard of it. It's called SportUp, as a collaboration between what we do within the university, and then on the other hand, 2 other entities. Sport Vlaanderen, I already shortly explained, which is our sports government agency. But then also we joined forces with imec.istart, and I will explain imec.istart in the next couple of slides. But that was already an existing accelerator, and they didn't really have a partner within that sports tech innovation ecosystem, whereas we from the university, the core business isn't sports startup acceleration and investment for projects that are not linked to the university. So we joined forces there to set up an initiative called SportUp, which is not a legal entity, but it's a collaboration between those parties that I just explained. So there's a separate website, as you may have seen already. And yeah, within the different programs, we already helped a bunch of companies finding problem solution fit, product market fit, appropriate business model, go-to-market strategy, helping them with their challenges in terms of, it could be technological challenges, of course, but it could also be marketing challenges and so on. So we structured it a bit. We said, okay, let's do three things: SportUp Meet, Boost, Start. Meet are our community events. Boost is a very short program that we composed, as I already explained, focusing on early stage startups and the things that they need to have in place. And then we have our program that was already there within the imec.istart program, but we offer extra support for them, the sports startups who get into that program. Yeah, as many organizations do, they have meetups, and so we also try to create that community. As for now, it's mainly a local community, yeah, I think it's really valuable because now people have, let's say, some kind of single point of contact where they could ask their questions, and we could provide some advice in terms of, okay, speak to this or that person, or yeah, okay, the idea is mature enough to enter into, for example, our SportUp Boost program, or if people want to apply for the imec.istart accelerator, we could also help them a little bit. And if they got accepted, then we do a first investment and can help them throughout the year. Yeah, this has been grown over the past 2 years. Of course, we also switched to digital in terms of events, but that's nothing new. We also started to share some of our methodologies and so on and so on. And of course, yeah, we're very open when it comes to sharing knowledge on how to set up the initiative, how to structure it, how to yeah, increase the value that we can provide. Of course, also from an international context. I will talk about that later on. You know how it goes with these kind of things. We do many workshops, we do one-on-one coaching, people go out in the field, all of these type of activities. In the next couple of slides, I'll talk a little bit about imec.istart because that's, let's say, the backbone of the initiative, besides what I have been doing the last couple of years within the university. Maybe a few words about imec. So imec.istart is actually the accelerator initiative within a much larger organization, being imec. I think that's also one of the, well, you could say maybe that's one of the success factors, is that you have larger organizations in place where sports isn't really on the agenda. If you look at, for example, imec as an organization with over 4,500 employees. Yeah, within the accelerator of the organization, we have been able then to put sport on the agenda. And yeah, this has been a good strategy, so to say, because otherwise, yeah, in my endeavors to set up a new accelerator program, if we wouldn't have that bigger organization, which imec is, that probably wasn't possible to do. So as you see here on the slides, I mean, imec is our key, you could say, tech innovation institute. It's linked to those 5 universities, and it's some kind of hybrid structure. They have their own facilities and employees and so on. And then many of the research groups within the 5 universities are linked to the institute. I think that's maybe set up that is also there in other countries. Yeah, they have already a global presence, you could say. So the headquarters are in Leuven, here in Belgium. But there are also other entities, as you can see here on the map. It's one of the key players in both hard and software innovation in many different areas. The closest link that we have with them is, okay, some of our Ghent University research groups, they are imec affiliated. And on the other hand, they do quite some projects as well within the health side of, so healthcare, but then also the health side of sports. So everything that relates to physical activity, health, well-being, etc., etc. They really are working on breakthrough innovations in that area. But so I have the closest partnership with them in relation to their imec.istart accelerator activities. So you can see here, it's an accelerator that was already in place, and you can see here sports tech has become then one of the verticals within the program. And so I'm working partly for the imec.istart program to help those companies in the program who are in the sports field. As said here, it's a 12 to 18 month program. 18 is for those who want to be a medical device. So it's in fact a one year program. We do invest 50K at the start, up to 150K money that is coming from the imec.istart funds, which is managed by both imec, 2 banks, a telecom player, an IT company, and the Flemish government. And we really focus on the quality of what we actually do. I think that's a key point, so to say. And probably also it's one of the reasons why they have been labeled as the #1 business accelerator linked to university here in Europe by UB Global. There is also, as I will tell a few words about that, a soft landing program. For example, for those companies who want to enter the European market, we also do some services for them. Yeah, I think you're familiar with startup accelerators and what they do. And they provide access to coaching, finance, technology, community, talent, market, and so on. And this is also what we do. But I think looking at the sports tech startup accelerator ecosystem, I can honestly say we're doing a really good job when it comes to qualitative support, coaching of the entrepreneurs, also as a person. Of course, yeah, this is then focused on the next stage. So you have seen what I'm doing in the university is, you could say, pre-startup. once a startup is launched and there is a proof of concept, there is a proof of technology, there is a team in place, there is an initial idea about going to the market. At that stage, startups can be selected. We score them on over 40 criteria at the start. We also have our own software for that. And then we help them throughout the year. Yeah, these are some figures. Not sure if it's really relevant for what we're talking about now within sports, because the amount of sports startups in the program, it's about 7 to 10 for the moment. So we have to see how they will be doing the next couple of years. But it's one of the success factors is that imec.istart is focusing on sports together with us. And so this made it possible. If I'm looking back a couple of years from now, this wasn't in place here in the region. People in sports, they didn't really know where to go. They could go to imec.istart, but then they didn't really have people within the sports tech innovation ecosystem. So we have 3 cohorts a year. So it's open. It's also open for international startups. So more and more international startups are applying. So that's of course another option to collaborate, both as the startup, but also maybe on an accelerator point of view. So again, this is another opportunity, I think, to at some point do some exchange of know-how, do some programs together when it comes to the link between what we are doing and what's happening in Australia. A few words here. I'm not directly involved in this because this is really managed by people within imec. But there are also some activities more on the corporate innovation side. So if people would be interested in that, please reach out and we can set up a meeting with the relevant people as well. Then a few words about the program here, the Global Markets Accelerator. So this is a program managed by a colleague of mine, and La Trobe University is involved here. And this is really focused on Australian companies that want to enter the European markets. And as I said at the beginning, Brussels is a good place to do that. And so we help them on the level of business-related aspects, technology, product-related aspects, financial-related aspects, and of course, entering into the Belgian and then European community. So happy to provide more information for those who would be interested in this as well. Yeah, this is linked to a program called imec Scale Up. So it's for more mature companies who are ready to do international business. This is a slide a bit, what I just explained, promoting a bit our region as being centrally placed within Europe. I think this is clear. Of course, Belgium has something to offer as well, besides what I already mentioned. We are also part of the Global Accelerator Network. I think that's another entity which we could use, so to say, to build more bridges. So I'm not sure which entities, in fact, are part of Global Accelerator Network, but that could be another idea, so to say, to set up initiatives in that regard. What about international trade missions and programs? So we have 2 entities here called Flanders Investment and Trade, and then Ahoria. One is Flemish and the other one is a national initiative. Maybe some of you are familiar with Flanders Investment and Trade. It's the organization that helps to do international business for Flemish companies. Maybe you have been in touch before with Luca. He has been looking into the Australian sports tech market and composed a very interesting report then for Flemish companies, which I, of course, then communicate to our startups. And so, yeah, I mean, that connection is there now. And of course, we're open to discuss new opportunities for the future. Martin Schlegel from ESTN, he emailed me yesterday about this contact. They also had a chat. So there are some initial ideas about trade missions, etc. Then there is our national initiative. So that's managed by Diego Alhaba from Ahoria. And so Flanders Investment Trades and Ahoria, they often collaborate. You see, this is a bit the structure of Belgium, how it is organized. We have regional and national activities, but we do communicate and we go out often for international missions together. So they have their technology club, business club, which more has a focus on stadium building, facility management, event management, entertainment, and so on and so on. And so my background is more related, as I already explained, related to athlete tech, so more health and performance oriented. We do have a bit the same. It's also initiated by Jacques Rogge back in 2003. I think many countries have those kind of initiatives which try to facilitate international business development. As I already explained, they're more focused on the fan and the media and the stadium fan experience type of companies. As you can see here, there are many bigger companies within their business club. And we then facilitate with the startups that we are helping. We also advise them to become a member of Ahoria, so they can be helped as well on the international side of things. Maybe you know some of these companies. EVS is really known. NEP in the broadcast area. Barco is a really famous company in technologies related to screens and projections and so on and so on. I mean, many companies in there. We don't have the time to discuss them all, of course. It's growing. So the ecosystem here is growing. They also have more and more members. So that's a good thing. As I said, Diego Alhaba here on the left, he is the manager of the club. And so, yeah, we also looking into new opportunities for the future together. These are the type of initiatives that they do. I don't think that's new. I think ASTN is also doing that on the Australian side. So they mainly focus on the big tournaments, European World Championships, of course, Olympic Games, and sport-specific type of events. They had a plan, of course, for 2020, but then that virus hit us. So yeah, they totally changed plans now. So hopefully they can restart doing those international missions soon. We also, and this is initiated by the World Belgian Football Association, so the Red Devils, which is of course one of our biggest brands when it comes to Belgian sports. And yeah, they also initiated now the idea of creating a hub, a sports tech innovation hub there at their training grounds. Yeah, you know, these kind of initiatives, this is something that we all miss, I think, to travel and also a bit to have fun and get introduced to to relevant people from different countries. So, these kind of activities, I hope we can do them again soon. Of course, yeah, everything that relates to cycling. So if there are companies active within cycling, of course, happy to introduce you here and there as well, as we will be organizing the World Championship here in Flanders. Hockey is becoming really popular as well, of course, with good results of our national team as well. Yeah, really tech savvy sport here in the region. Okay, other organization on the international level, which I think you should should know, is EPSI. EPSI is the European Platform for Sport Innovation. Key people there, Alberto Bicchi, René Wellens. We also part of them, and they're actually focusing more on the European fundraising aspects, lobbying in Europe to put sport on the agenda, and also help in business creations within Europe. So I didn't really explore yet if there are European funds or initiatives which we could use, but maybe that's something we could discuss with the EPSI people as well. And then there are a few other learnings that I'm happy to share from those 2 years that we are running the accelerator. First thing, we see some companies, they don't survive. But we do see that some people then they restart something else. So yeah, we also experience also from a personal people level, yeah, it's always positive to have people within those programs, and in the end, it always leads to something. Of course, you want the companies to scale if you help them, but sometimes that's not the case. Also, we're learning, and we are working on a strategy now. Is okay with SportUp, we are helping the startups, but on the other hand, of course, you have those needs and challenges within the field. And we're also thinking about, okay, what's the best process to put in place, looking at solutions for those particular challenges. Some of them will be solved by technologies already available in the market. Some of them will require more research. Some of them maybe will require a new company or a combination of expertise, but we're thinking about what's the best practice. There is a certain challenge within a federation. Okay, what's next? How can we help them with, in the end, creating a solution for them? And that could be locally, but that could also then be, of course, in an international context. In terms of mindset, I think that's maybe the biggest win. How could you create a culture of innovation? How could you create an entrepreneurial spirit, both on the academic side as within federations? I think this is really interesting. It's more maybe a bit more abstract, but I think the things we're doing are also helping in changing the mindset and changing the culture and inspiring people to think a bit more in, let's say, an open innovation way. Not sure how it is in Australia, but here, large part of our sports sector is positioned within a non-profit environment or culture, you could say. I think in Australia, that might be a bit different. I don't really know, but here, if you want to enter schools, if you want to enter local teams, if you want to work with smaller federations, and so on, sometimes it's difficult to do that as a commercial entity. And so that was also a gap that we have seen in the past years. And that was one of the reasons why we created a non-profit organization as well. The trigger was a Ghent University project, I will explain. And also Sport Vlaanderen was asking for an entity, a non-profit entity, to bring more of the sports scientific evidence into practical applications on the one hand, and on the other hand, also help those non-profit organizations within sports with their digital related challenges. So this is a non-profit that we created with a few people, and you see many of the logos there. It's different types of organizations here. I will not explain them all, but they all positioned at some point to schools, to sports medical community, to local governments, cities, and so on and so on. The trigger for it was this project, which I already shortly explained. And at a certain moment, that was in about 10 PhDs, but we didn't really have physical testing products. We didn't really have a digital platform. We didn't really have an implementation plan. We didn't really have appropriate communication about the project. We didn't really have the people in place, etc., etc. And then government said, okay, we really want to implement this here within Flanders, but that's not really the wall of the university. It's also not the wall of a commercial entity. And that for us was then the trigger to say like, okay, maybe we should create that non-profit organization ourselves. And so we did, so with 4 people, Bruno Dulster, he's actually the key person. He has a background in IT consultancy. And at a certain moment, he was really inspired by this project. And together with me, he spent almost 2 years of his time to actually make this happen. So yeah, at this moment, we with 8 people within the organization. So as said, yeah, I think this is something you all know. It's more related to the societal challenges and the link between sport and physical activity of children. And so, yeah, for them, we developed different solutions. The Sport Compass, I will explain, and then also not only one testing methodology, but also then create a follow-up, so some kind of tracking system for them. As I said, this has been crucial. And if this wasn't there, we had a project where 10 PhDs were being made, but it wasn't really available for the sports sector. So that would have been a pity. And I'm quite sure there are many of those things that are in the universities and actually not being used. So yeah, that's a pity. So yeah, not going into details, but it's about some physical testing. It's about an interactive web platform. It's about a tool which gave deeper insights into the motivations of children, why they would or wouldn't do certain sports. With a platform with personalized reports for the parents and the physical education teachers, but then also to generate interesting statistics as, okay, how are we doing as a region based on those data. We're also creating a new website to link sports activities for children, to link them with the testing results. If, for example, one of the 5 sports is rope skipping, for example, it appears that, oh, maybe I should try. Where can I try that? What is rope skipping? What do I actually need? And so on and so on. And the whole idea is to, from the start, build upon a strategy to have more children doing the sports they like, and are a bit good at. And in the end, that will also then help the elite sports system. And then the physical education teachers, they are also asking us, okay, now it's a testing methodology, but we would also like to use it as a follow-up measurements and collecting data over the years. So this is also something that we will make possible in the near future. And so with Sportamundi, as I said, we also help other organizations who have different types of challenges and questions, and they think about a certain digital solution, but then what? And then we help them in the initial phases. We also into other types of funding, as you can imagine, more from the social impact investment type of area. So happy to hear a bit how is that being done in Australia, if it's there as well, yes or no. We do already have some international partners for this initiative as well. So also happy to explore those in the future. Yeah, Bruno is actually the key contact there. So open to discuss how this could be implemented in Australia, how Australian entities could learn from what we have been doing, and yeah, how the non-profit side of sports is actually alive, so to say, within Australia. So it's one of the initiatives that Sport Vlaanderen is doing. There are much more, but they're really focused on the Flemish part. So they don't really have that international focus. Yeah, happy to bring you in touch also with people from Sport Vlaanderen who are facilitating this from the sports government point of view. So to finish, yeah, how could we facilitate international research-driven innovation in sports technology? That's something that I really have been thinking about. I think we're doing a good job now the last couple of years with all the things that I already explained. But how can we do that in a better way from an international point of view? 2018 already organized a conference on that specific topic. Yeah, it was called Sports Tech Transfer and R&D Summit, a 2-day conference. Some Australian people were there together with EPSI. But then afterwards, I was like, okay, there isn't really a network organization that is really focused on that research-driven part of the sports technology ecosystem. Of course, there are many others already existing, but in that specific niche, there isn't really a group of people who is dealing with those kind of topics. Whereas I think research will become more and more important. I think we all know sports tech is a really marketing-driven area. Of course, there is some R&D, but I think there's still a large gap between what the academic world is doing. Well, I already explained it. And so I think there's really a place for new initiatives within this specific area. Both on the level of making the field a bit more transparent, who is doing what in different universities, research institutes, and so on. What are funding opportunities? Who is actually dealing with what type of R&D projects? I don't really have a good view on that. And often it remains a bit under the radar, whereas there's not always a clear reason to do that, in fact. Whereas in sports, people do have challenges. And also from a business point of view, it can really be interesting to set up new university business collaborations. I already talked about those licensing and spin-off opportunities, which in the end, of course, could help in solving those challenges. Yeah, so this was one of the reasons, in fact, to have a better view on, okay, what is the academic world actually offering? And I noticed there are many different fields. Of course, both in the sports sciences, that's obvious, also in the technological domains, as institute, as imec, but also in the management and business fields. And I'm really interested in that area as well. And yeah, sports tech innovation, I think by nature is something really multidisciplinary. So I think the academic world should also move into that multidisciplinary type of direction. An Australian author, Vanessa Ratton, is really publishing on these kind of aspects. And yeah, I'm always interested in what she's writing. She's writing a lot of papers. Often it's a bit theoretical, but okay, the translation to the real world will happen. And yeah, Sasha Schmidt, he's one of the other speakers here in these ASTN sessions. He published that book a few weeks or months ago. And so, yeah, these are all things that are happening now based on more research type of people, research-focused people who are becoming more and more active within the sports tech domain. I think that's a good thing. I think it's also the moment to do this, because also in the academic world, there is more and more focus now on creating an impact. Researchers need to become more societally relevant. They need to come out of the ivory tower, so to say. Yeah, and I want to contribute to that movement. And so that's why over summer we launched an initiative called Sports Tech Research Network. A few Australians are already involved. Adam Clark, for example, of Swinburne University of Technology. Sam Robertson as well from Victoria University. And the whole idea is to become a network-based organization in the next couple of months. So I attracted some funding, and we are working on this with a team of people. So you probably will see a few more things in the future. There's also a podcast that I started within this niche area of things. But as said, I'm really motivated to make a change in this area. One of the first things to do is make the field a bit more transparent. I was at a certain moment questioning myself, what are the key institutes in Europe and the key people and the clusters, as I have one, Victoris, within Ghent University. I couldn't really find that type of information on the internet. So yeah, we started to collect that ourselves. Would be really interested. I think the report made by Flanders Investment Trades is a very, very good starting point to also have a better view on what is out there in this area in Australia. Probably that information is already available somewhere. And also, yeah, as I said, have a clearer view on the different institutes, key people, but also on the project level, learn from previous spin-off projects, the processes that are in place, as I explained, with the dual structure within our university and how it then relates to the sports sector. The challenges that are out there, and maybe there are some solutions available here in the region and in Europe. So to conclude, the Belgian ecosystem is quite complex. There are a high variety of stakeholders, but the good thing is there is an increasing amount of interactions. Sport is on the agenda more and more. And for sure, the link between sports and health is something that many entities will focus on in the next couple of years. Many of the things are facilitated by the government, both on the research level, on the tech transfer level, on the support of federations as well, on the trade mission aspect, and so on and so on. So the government is playing an important role in facilitating those interactions. Of course, everything starts with high quality research, products and services, and of course, athletes and teams. And I think this is one of the things that I'm very happy with. We are not the biggest country, of course, And if you look at the map, we don't have the highest amount of startups. We don't have the highest amount of investments, et cetera, et cetera. But I think what we do is of high quality. For me, the future will be how to create that open innovation culture within the different entities in order to really move forward. And I'm happy to be part of that and to learn and to share, etc., etc. So, and I suggested a few topics. I suggested a few ways to collaborate, but I'm happy, of course, to explore those now in the Q&A and in the future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Hey, thank you, Kristof. Hopefully you can hear me all right.
Yep.
Awesome. I can say it was an absolutely information-packed session. By the way, I'm Justin Harmon, Brand and Communications Manager at the Australian Sports Technologies Network. First of all, I have to thank you for getting up nice and early for us this morning. Yeah, like absolutely soup to nuts. I think of everything that is in Belgium regarding sports tech has been covered there. I will remind participants to put your questions in the Q&A, and I will sort of run through those. I have a few myself as well. But I'll start off with Stuart, who's left a question regarding the SportUp start and if it's different to the imec.istart accelerator, and maybe go into a bit of the differences between the two, if there are differences.
Yeah, well, what is different between the two? So if you enter the SportUp Start project, it actually means you enter the imec.istart program, but you get extra support from myself and a few other people who are into sports tech full time. So you enter into the imec.istart program as it is there, but we do help with coaching you, with introducing you to set up regional pilots, to facilitate international. So we help you with international networks. We help you with defining your business model. We help you with defining your product market fit, etc., etc. So what's the difference? In fact, there is none. You enter the imec.istart program, but we branded it towards the sport community as SportUp, not only as the imec.istart program, because that's not really focused on sports. So that's what was one of the reasons to say, like, look, we do have a community, we do have a pre-acceleration program, and we do have extra support on top of what imec.istart was already offering. So that's a bit the answer, I think, to the question. If that,
I think that's as much as you can go in between something that has no difference. I think that's enough to sort of say that is no difference. I've got one that I can sort of ask you. I think something that, especially very early in the presentation, was very evident was, I guess, the universities working closely, I guess, with the government, and that's how a lot of this sort of innovation is sort of spawned and how it's developed. Something that's quite common here, and I'm sure, as you mentioned, Sam Robertson, Victoria University have a very close relationship with the Western Bulldogs here, which is I guess what you would call like a corporate sort of big league elite sporting club. Are there similar sort of examples, I guess, in Belgium of, say, teams, I'm trying to think of maybe like RSC Anderlecht or those sort of ones that have got sort of collaborations with universities developing technology?
Yep. So we do have close collaborations, for example, with Club Brugge or with our Ghent football team. There are different ways. For example, in Bruges, the people working there in the tech and data analytics aspect, they did their PhD at our university. So that's an obvious connection, so to say. And we do have frequent communications as to what extent can Club Brugge collaborate with different professors and projects within the university. On the other hand, for example, with Ghent, the collaboration is in a different way. There we do have a PhD student who is working within the team, so he's really within the staff of the team. And then the professor, he's really into exercise physiology and training. he is advising the Ghent football team staff on the broader strategy and so on. And so the PhD student, 90% of his time he's working within the team, and then the rest of his time he's able to do his PhD. So that's a different format, so to say.
So there is that sort of collaboration between,
exactly,
which is similar with us.
Exactly.
I took a bunch of sort of notes down in terms of, I guess, when you've sort of asked questions or where there's things that I go, yeah, that's similar to what we've sort of got here. I am by no means as much of an expert as some of the sort of people you've mentioned, but especially I noticed with sort of the imec sort of pivot towards sports technology, it's rather similar to, we've seen in even just this past year, we had SportUp Bootcamp run their first ever sports tech accelerator program here in Melbourne. And we also had, I think, Techstars coming with a similar sort of thing as well. So it's definitely something that these larger sort of accelerator programs around the world are definitely recognizing the potential of sports tech, be it either the, I guess, off-field sort of event tech sort of focus, which was a lot of the stuff at the SportUp Bootcamp, and also that sort of on-field development as well, which I think is fed a lot through universities, and I think also is also fed into some of the pre-accelerator programs that are now sort of existing, including the one that ASTN currently has with GSIC in Spain. So that sort of stuff I think is something that's rather sort of similar, is that we're growing, but we're also, it's not as much as it's just these sort of industries that have had sport in them. It's the ones that are recognizing the potential of sport and have came into sport also. I think that's rather evident. I do have another question from Stuart. I'll ask that to you now. With funding offered from the imec.istart program, is there a trade of equity required? Which is probably a very good point on how much do you have to give up to get involved?
Yeah, the basic deal with imec.istart is they take 6% equity in return for a 50K investment and the 1 year program. That's the basic deal. And they can invest up to 150K from the fund for 1% extra per 20K. But that's then a decision made by the investment committee. So that's the basic deal within the imec.istart program.
I was going to say it's rather similar to any sort of other accelerators I've sort of seen or researched. Yeah. It's fairly common to have that sort of 6%. Depending on what you sort of get out of it, I think depends on the network of those that have that sort of, what their network is will depend how much you really get out of those accelerator programs. But definitely in the middle of Europe, you're definitely selling it quite well in terms of the right place you want to be to gain access to a lot of different areas and different people. So I think it's a good example of that. I was going to say also something else, especially the Sport Compass stuff regarding, I guess, almost talent identification from a young age is something that one of our directors at the ASTN, John Persico, has sort of triggered or really marked as a key area that he thinks over the next 10 years will become very, very crucial in terms of the development of innovation within technology and its intersection with sport. I think it's really good to see that sort of stuff coming through. I think you could even look back 5 years ago now and think that's almost something that wouldn't come about. And I think there is also almost a point of data and control and giving collecting data at a young age and stuff like that. Have you sort of seen with Sport Compass, how has the sort of reaction been, or the public opinion in a sense towards that sort of data collection?
Well, we see two clear different mindsets, so to say, and that was also one of the reasons to split both the talent ID part and what is in the in this specific area of the sport literature, it is called talent detection or orientation. So with the Sport Compass project, we really focused on orientation. So not in the mindset of we're gonna identify who will be the high potentials, because people in schools and parents and more in the societal impact type of area, they don't want to hear that. So that's why we have split up. Or you're really focusing on talent ID and you look at, okay, within basketball, within football, and so on, how could we really define who are the high potentials and have, so it is one of the reasons to invest in, you could say, towards the future. So that's one area, and we separate, so that's within our highlight spin-off companies. So that's what they are doing, and they're targeting the federations and teams, et cetera, et cetera. And on the other hand, we have our Sport Compass project, which is more focused on, okay, and that's also evidence-based. Children should do a sport they are a bit good at, and so they have some experiences of success, not within elite sport, but and they should of course do something that they really like to do. So before it was mixed up, and it didn't work. It didn't work because people in the schools, they were like, what the hell are you doing? We're not working with you because you're only interested in those few children who have the potential to become. So yeah, we clearly have split up those things.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of thing I think I was touching on, is that I think it's almost a societal thing that I think it's good that you've been able to sort of separate that. I think that's very crucial, and I definitely think it's something for the Australian market, and I think that's very, very protective in terms of, let's make sure that it's, that we're separating that sort of stuff. Another thing I was going to touch on is obviously trade missions and that sort of thing. You mentioned that ASTN, hopefully, depending, I guess, how this pandemic is panning out over the next sort of year or so, hopefully we can get back to Europe. It's always a very valuable trade mission that we can provide to ASTM members and Australian sports tech companies and startups. I think moving forward, Martin will obviously be working very closely with Europe as he does. And hopefully soon we can get back on that, as I think it's really one of the most valuable things that through the ASTN we're able to provide companies. And obviously you're doing a similar thing there, especially with the outreach and how close in proximity you are to other sort of big nations in terms of the sort of Europe area. But I definitely think that's something that the ASTN has gotten on board with, and something that I think we find really valuable, especially in our sort of little sequestered spot over in the side of the map where not many other people are. I was going to say, I'll give one last sort of round to anyone to ask a question. There is the Q&A button on the Zoom call. Because one thing I sort of also wanted to touch on, it's funny, a lot of the people you sort of touched on, Adam Carg, Mark and Lorraine, stuff like that, they're people that I actually when I went to university, I worked a lot with. And come up. But yeah, I think closing off from myself, at least, I think it's very sophisticated in terms of what has been built in Belgium. I think Australia, we are sort of still developing a sports technology culture, as much as we have some giants like Catapult and Bold Performance, and I guess now Sports Technology Group, now part of Stack Sports, stuff like that. They're big companies, but we're really starting to develop that earlier stage, sort of building the building blocks, I should say, of these sort of pre-accelerators and accelerators with the likes of Startup Bootcamp and Techstars and the Australian Sports Technologies Accelerator Program as well. It's available to members. I think we're really starting to see, and I think we can learn a lot from how this Belgian system is set up to implement and further grow the huge amount of potential we have here in Australia to grow sports technology. I've got no more questions coming through. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I'm sure we'll have plenty on demand as well. So if you're watching this back and you want to get in touch with Kristof, his email is right there on the screen, so you can get in touch with him. A lot of potential here between the two nations, and I look forward to hearing about when we're collaborating more. Thanks again for listening and for inviting me to provide the session. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. See you. Bye. Have a nice day.